match number 1 of the day. We have Shaxy versus che0nsu starting our day off here, and it is going to be again, just pretty solid lineup, I feel, from Shaxy. There is some spice in there with his warrior deck that he has shielded, of course. And let me just sort this out so I've got this right. He is playing the Deathwing, the double plague on the warrior, which is going to be pretty interesting. And che0nsu's druid is open as well, which is mainly what it's for. But the real question for me is, you see che0nsu's shield on the shaman, so he has shaman and zoo to be able to go against Shaxy's fairly anti-aggro lineup, I would say. Anti-control lineup.
Yes, anti-control. I absolutely agree with that. Kind of anti-control, anti-druid, I suppose you could say, is really what he's trying to target, which is obviously very nice that che0nsu has that. Some of the players have been omitting that. che0nsu's shield there is somewhat interesting because I feel like, honestly, I would have been equally okay with Shaman or Priest. I think they were both pretty good against Shaxy's overall lineup. Because as we can see here, Warrior, the Quest Paladin, as well as the Zoo deck, I feel like all three of these are, in my opinion, quite weak to Quest Shaman, which is why it's a decent ban. I also think they're all fairly vulnerable against the Priest as well. That's pretty good against all of these. I guess the Warrior would be the best counter to all of those.
That's it, isn't it? It's the fear of the Warrior, I think. And what's going to be interesting for me is, because of the expectation that if you read the lineups, then you'd say, well, che0nsu never queues Druid, because I feel like the matchups are really bad, so you'll try and play Zoo and Shaman. If that's the case, does Shaxy ever actually say, like, queues his Zoo first and just be like, got you?
Maybe. I would need to talk to the actual players more who have an experience of this, because there's undeniably mind games that happen in Game 3. There's not necessarily like a mathematical edge you can give yourself.
Right.
It's just what you expect your opponent to do. You're guessing, double guessing them over them. Again, it's like the Sicilian in Princess Bride. But it's difficult to get an actual mathematical edge. Game 1, I'm not sure if it's the same, but just so much more times complicated because there's 3 decks. So it's basically impossible to tell what your opponent's going to do. But yeah, for che0nsu here, whether or not it's actually the case, I think starting off with something like Zoo to try and catch out an easy matchup on the Paladin would be a nice way to go.
The thing is, you definitely can't make these reads every time in everyone's lineup, but when you have a set of decks, which is good, I feel like all 3 of Shaxy's decks are pretty good versus Druid, then you've just got to assume che0nsu isn't going to like, I'll queue Druid, because it just doesn't seem right with this with the lineup he has, right? So for me, especially with the shield on the Shaman, che0nsu almost certainly will queue Shaman or Warlock as priority wins for him. And like I said, I think that's a completely fair read and low level read to make. So maybe we do see Shaxy play the Zoo at some point in the season.
And I think the main thing to take away from this is that, in my opinion, it looks like che0nsu has just a very strong lineup against what Shaxy's rolling here. The fact that he's got Priest and Shaman that are so strong against what Shaxy is playing. Again, of course, it's Conquest, so once he wins with it, he can't queue it again, and the Priest has been banned. But just giving himself almost guaranteed one very strong matchup in the Shaman is a great way to get things rolling, and then he should be able to take a win with his Druid or his Zoo afterwards fairly easily.
Yeah, very interested to see if this Druid gets picked or at all in the series, but for now, it's not going to be Druid either side. It's going to be the Warrior from Shaxy on the top and the Shaman from che0nsu on the bottom. che0nsu, fairly straightforward mulligan there. Keep hold of the quest and throw away the 2 bad cards. It's pretty straightforward for me. Shaxy, a little bit more to think about, I think.
There's obviously merit to hold on to the Dynamatic to fight away in the mid-game. But I can also understand why you'd want to get rid of it. He's really looking for the 1-drops. There you go. The only 2 1-drops in the deck of the 2 Town Criers. And also against this deck for Shaman, there's often like a bunch of totems knocking about, quite high health stuff relative to the mana cost, or at least low card expenditure. The Dynamatic often doesn't feel like it does quite enough.
Yeah. I think the good thing it does is dodge Mogu Flesh Shaper most of the time, right?
That's fair.
It makes it not super cheap or 0, which can be a bit of a problem.
Absolutely. As we see, che0nsu has picked up the Mogu Flesh Shaper, which is far from the auto-victory condition it can be against some of the more tempo-based decks. But it's still a very nice way to apply some early pressure, because if you can get that to mutate and then stick for a turn, getting that in that chip damage against a Warrior at the start, even if it's just 1 attack of an 8-drop, can make all the difference in the world.
I think it alters your game plan as well quite dramatically, because it means maybe you can go for burst if that's what your hand dictates. A bit of an awkward turn. I guess just Evil Totem seems good. A lot of players do just play Mind Control tech on curve versus Warrior and try and just dump it down if they have it early, because it's not often you're going to make much use of it, and almost certainly never with the hero power. So I wouldn't hate that either from che0nsu, but
they're both just pretty weak to coin Restless Mummy. But I guess either way, if you're seeing coin Restless Mummy from your opponent, you're probably not all too sad about that.
I think it doesn't put on enough. It doesn't actually do a good enough job to use the coin, actually. I think Shaxy can play it a lot slower.
Yeah, I agree. And this does, of course, make it... This play has a bigger punish if they don't go for Restless Mummy, because it means they are less incentivized to play Acolyte, less incentivized to play Snip Snap, which are basically their only proactive 3-drop plays. So from che0nsu, I think overall, I can agree with this play.
Shaxy, they're going to use Shield Slam instead. Again, Shaman doesn't really have tons of massive minions outside of mutates, which you could mutate into a high weak, mutate into an Octosari. You know, you can't really just, oh, I'll save Shield Slam if they get Mogu into mutate and it's a big minion I can't handle.
Yeah, I think it's very easy hero power over Evil Totem here for che0nsu. He's seen the Town Crier, he knows it's likely that there is a Restless Mummy in hand, and he doesn't want to just give a quick double bash to take out both of them.
Funnily enough, though, so I just realised I love che0nsu's t-shirt.
Oh yeah, I bet chat's exploding right now. How did I not realise that?
By avoiding, not giving Shaxy the Restless Mummy turn, means that Shaxy doesn't have to play a bad Restless Mummy, he can play something else.
That's fair.
Do you know what I mean? It's like a roundabout, okay, you don't get a good turn, but then neither do I, because now che0nsu's still got Restless Mummy to think about, and Shaxy got to play an Acolyte. So it's like, is this better or worse for who? I don't know.
I think with Evil Totem, though, it wouldn't be he has to play a bad Restless Mummy. I think he gets a very good Restless Mummy then, because the second half can just attack in and survive, which is then more board dominance for Shaxy.
It's tough though, right? Because now he's got... Obviously, Acolyte was a problem card as an answer, but Acolyte just means that Shaxy's going to draw his deck, which means he has even more answers and good turns coming up. It's just interesting, that's all, that, like, negating one thing from your opponent is not always just awesome, right? It's not always correct.
Absolutely, especially as this matchup is, you know, we know that generally the aggression early on from the Quest Shaman is usually not good enough to get there, unless they can get off a, you know, one of those disgusting turns, as we've talked about in Mogu and Flesh.
Or even discover Bloodlust, you know,
something like that. Exactly. Yeah. There's cheesy victory win conditions you can get, but for the most part, it is trying to just eke out value where you can and get into chip damage.
And now it's just very interesting to me, isn't it? Because that turn happened, and now the Mummy killed a Mogu and the Totem as well. Like, better, worse total outcome. Difficult to actually add up in the real world, of course, but it's just something to think about. Maybe you just think, if I get a lackey from a Totem and he has to put a Mummy into it and spend his whole turn, okay.
I think this worked out pretty well for che0nsu. He gets to push 4 chip damage this turn, and again, every point that he can push is very important in this matchup, because I think one of the things that we've realized is that, well, maybe not we've realized, but the other players have realized in this matchup, maybe you have, certainly not myself personally, pushing face damage is very, very important in this matchup. Getting the chip damage early on and then trying to close things out with life drinkers, weaponized wasps, and any kobold lackeys is super important.
Yeah, it's something we've spoken about between ourselves anyway, but when I've been saying that with all my games on Shaman, I feel like you don't just burn Warrior from hand, because you can't. They actually just have a ton of health. So it goes on top of, well, if you can do chip damage and burn them, well, that sounds much more reasonable. But I think the whole idea of, oh, you just bounce all of this and go face, well, if you're not hitting them with anything else, that literally does not add up to the health that they can get to.
And I guess because of that, che0nsu's deck is slightly more optimized to do that. With 2 copies of Former Champ, he obviously has a much bigger mid-game punch to be able to try and stick a board and get the damage through to face. But then the downside of that, of course, or the counterplay to that from Shaxy, is he has more removal. With his build of the deck that has 2 copies of Plague of Wrath, 2 Brawls, as well as the Vampiric Scoundrels, as well as the Bloomin' Deathwing that he's got in hand.
As well as the Zephyrus he plays.
There you go, right.
Because Zephyrus it might be the one that pushes the game over the edge for me.
Very well could be. Twisting Nether. Maybe even it's just a healing touch or something like that. That could be all it takes.
Just look at it this way, right? Imagine even late game Shaman, right? Imagine alt the hand And then Shaxy goes Zephyrus, Twisted Nether, che0nsu makes a board, Deathwing. Like, what are you supposed to do? You just
You're
lose,
just
right?
sad.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think you just lose most of the time at that point.
It is really the great weakness of Quest Shaman at the moment is there is basically no single target removal in the deck.
Yeah.
Unless
You
you're
have to
getting down
discover.
to right, weaponized wasps for double attacks, but like you said, it's Hex, it's Plague of Murlocs. Those are the kind of things you need to hit.
I thought you were going to say the main weakness of Quest Shaman at the moment is it's one of the few decks that can't realistically play Zephyrus.
Right.
So I was like, yes.
That is true.
Also,
Yeah,
imagine
yeah.
Zephyrus in this list, just somehow, it'd be
Yeah.
insane.
I mean,
Zephyrus bloodless game.
I bet it will at some point. It's like when Patches was in the game, and at first people were like, okay, this goes in Rogue. Obviously it goes in Warrior, and then at the end people were putting it in Priest, in Warlock, just
Yeah.
in the jankiest deck because it was just so good.
Like Hunter just stopped playing Beasts because
Right, you had to play
had stuff that are
Patches.
better than Beasts.
Yeah.
But yeah, it just already you just start to look, and I know the hands do slightly different things, but you look at che0nsu's hand, and honestly, even if he had this hand, he could play this hand over and over again for like the next 3 turns.
Yeah.
I think Shaxy still has enough removal.
Probably. I mean, to be fair there, discovering the Warpath of the Volkira Scout was insane. That was like a pretty nice bailout there for Shaxy. He could, of course, have gone Coin, Plague of Wrath to take out some of them, but this is quite clearly significantly cleaner. And maybe che0nsu can now use this information to his advantage, though. As unlucky as that was for Shaxy to get the extra Warpath, now he's going to smell weakness and can start to develop onto the board a little bit more heavily.
Honestly, every which way I know it's wrong, a part of me just wants to see Shaxy coin Deathwing on 9. Just
Boom,
because it's a
Elysiana,
play.
Zephyrus, gone. Because who cares?
Look at Zephyrus on turn 8. Hopefully.
You're not incorrect.
Like he slammed himself, but obviously did not.
Yeah, I
Just
know,
a
I was
weird
thinking
animation, but... Oh, there's Brawl. So now there's Brawl, there's Plague. No, activate for Plague now, because there's nothing left for it. So I guess this is going to be a shield block and just take it. Or do you think the Acolyte is worth dropping down here? To have a middle ground between soaking some damage and just drawing a card.
I don't know. Acolyte obviously
Maybe
runs
just get it out of
into
your hand.
overdrawing fears, but the thing is, does he care?
Nah, he's got that. He's
Yeah.
got to discard his hand anyway.
He's got all the good cards. Oh, yeah.
Just gets him to his Zephyrus being active faster.
The problem is not being able to clear this board is very bad because these are literally all Battlecry minions that can be bounced back with Barista here. There's too much value for che0nsu.
And this is where I always hit a weird point, and
This
I
is
think
insane.
the most times I disagree with analysis of Shaman overall, is a load of value, but is it good value? I know value is generally
That's
deemed
fair.
a good thing, but
That's fair.
so what? 2 lackeys, a
Yeah.
1 drop, 2 drops. Like, does Warrior care? Like, if you play this board again, should I say, oh, okay, you're hitting me for 6 total damage or
Yeah.
something, maybe a bit more.
It's interesting. It kind of plays back to what I was saying about the deck I've been playing somewhat jokingly.
Sorry, you just hero powered it, so it's going to get you twice.
Yeah, of course. I mean, you can just dump one of the cards from his hand. It's just 2
you won't
extra here.
overdraw, yeah. It's funny.
But when you're playing a deck like the kind of plot twist quest warlock, or a more relevant example would be OTK Paladin, you have so many cards that you can use them so inefficiently, which almost makes them more powerful because you're just throwing stuff onto the board. You're playing stuff so quickly and liberally. And that's what che0nsu can now do. Even though I agree these cards are not on average that good, just a bunch of lackeys off of Sludge Slurp, if he's just going, he doesn't have to play around anything anymore. He can just develop as much as he possibly can onto the board every turn, which is a big asset to his gameplay.
Shaxy, sorry, just drawing a big asset to anyone's gameplay, which is Zilliax, of course. No mechs on the board, though. Maybe, is this a weak enough turn to just slam boom?
Interesting. There's 13 damage on the board.
Yeah. You
quite
heal
high.
/ gain 7 armor.
Yeah.
So you take 5, go down to 18. That changes a few things, obviously.
Potentially a 5 Warpath.
I just
turn.
wonder if he could, the way I see it is, well, che0nsu's got loads of stuff. he just remakes this board if he clears it. Then he's in the same spot.
You'd rather have a random card in his deck than the coin. Is that right?
Probably.
Probably, yeah. I guess he's still got some good removal cards.
Dynamatic.
Yeah, an extra brawl, an extra play probably makes enough of a difference, even though there's some duds.
But yeah, I just think like I like this play because on paper he goes to 18, which is fine, especially after drawing the Warpath. And if he clears the board, then he knows for a fact next turn che0nsu can put the same board out again, more or less.
It's true.
So then what's the point? Like,
and I guess even if just a single former champ comes down, that's like 11 damage on the board already.
Yeah, it's like...
I agree. I think this was...
And also, this limits what che0nsu can do, because there's a whole load of 1/1s on the board.
Great point, yeah, that's also...
So I really like it, actually.
Yeah, I've come around. I like 13 damage on the board is a lot to be taking in this matchup, as we've said, with the burst damage, because when you're pushing damage like this, the burst plan all of a sudden becomes, my god, is that a valid game plan?
Yeah. It's very similar. I view that turn as like a timeout turn.
That's fair.
Like, you use timeout to just gain a turn and don't really fall too far behind, because the board state ends up being the same no matter what.
Second Warpath being found after the first coming off of Vulpera Scoundrel. So now how is Shaxy approaching this? I guess Brawl's good here. Yeah.
Just doesn't want the 4/7 or the Barista to live.
Ooh, Zephyr's now active with the Dynamatic.
Oh, he's going to draw. Okay. I guess he really wants to press the hero power.
Wants the hero power. Yeah.
Reasonable.
Because in the next few turns, Dynamatic plus Ziliax is very juicy.
At the time, obviously, he didn't have Dynamatic.
Sure.
So
of course.
it looks a bit different. But yeah, I agree. Just the fact that it was exactly gain 7. I think it was if it was almost any other hero power, you could argue to just not, but to like Brawl first.
And the interesting thing now is, I wonder if the late game aspect of Shaman will come into play, which is that not only is he pushing damage as much as possible, pushing threatening boards as often as possible, che0nsu, I think, with the amount of resources he has, could quite possibly put Shaxy in a situation where he actually can't play Elysiana lest he die.
And this is now where I really want to pay attention to the game, because this is my constant moaning about this matchup, is that I feel like you could argue, and you can agree with me or not, che0nsu's had a pretty decent game.
Yeah.
He's got tons of stuff.
He's had a very good
We're going
game.
into the late game.
Yeah.
He's not under any pressure. That's a very nice game, right?
Absolutely.
And I'm just interested to see, is this enough? Is it actually enough? Because if you look, Shaxy's also pretty much on 30 health.
Yeah.
So I'm just very interested from this point, because this is the point where I feel like people have the most differing opinions to myself about how good the deck is.
Life Drink coming down.
Not some nice damage.
Yeah, not being bounced, of course, which has the detriment of not being able to play it again and not getting another activation into the pool for Shudderwock. But again, with how much value che0nsu has, I think he can afford to go for this kind of plan, which is just throw stuff on the board.
And this is it. This is basically just, you know, wave defense from Shaxy right now.
Yeah.
It's just going to be another wave of minions and another wave of minions. The good thing for Shaxy is he knows outside of a choice couple of cards, there isn't any beefy minions going to hit the board.
True.
They're all going to be clearable, you know, whether it be Warpath, whether it be Kaboom, whether it be the Microbots and Dynamatics. You know, all these cards do very well against what che0nsu should be putting on the board.
Very true.
And that was a very nice player, wasn't it? That just feels good.
Yeah, and
it's just the fact that it left exactly 5 health on the board was like, okay.
Just worked out beautifully. And this is the kind of turn that Shaxy needs to make. Because even though he's a ways off from playing Elysiana quite yet, of course, these are the kind of plays that need to be happening to make sure he has board control in his favor when his turn comes around.
Can I just give a shout out to che0nsu? Why am I giving a shout out to che0nsu? Do you know?
No idea.
Is he potentially... Oh, actually, those are generated. Okay, I'm going to wait. Golden Lackey generations. Those are generated from the thingy, right? From the Barista. But then was the Barista not golden?
Well, he's clearly got something not golden in his deck, right? Yeah.
One of the few players who actually listened to the note about the Golden Lackey generation.
Yeah.
He gets a little golden star from me.
He does get a shout. Did you see G's tweet the other day about how Faceless Lackey and Titanic Lackey should swap around because Titanic Lackey doesn't have a face?
Oh, at the moment. Yeah. Oh, okay.
I thought that was very clever.
Ooh.
Oh, these are all really good.
Yeah.
I thought that was a Mega Descender, honestly. Imagine getting that in the Shuttlewalk pool. Like Hunter Ace's World Championship winning lineup. Plus 10 attack and taunt for a Shuttlewalk. Or just plus 10 attack. That's nuts.
Oh, okay. Got away with that one. Did you see the first evolve?
What was it?
I evolve a 2-2 into a 2-2. It was the beetle.
Well, easy come, easy go.
Yeah. And now, though, Zephyrus is live, which I'm going to say 9 times out of 10 is a board clear, but sometimes it's something a bit more. Because honestly, yes, we can see an Earth Shock, but what if Shaxy clears the board and ends up landing a pretty reasonable Tyrion? You know, or along those lines. Like, that is something that che0nsu isn't overly prepared to deal with. Obviously, we can see che0nsu has exactly an Earth Shock that's been discovered, but you can't always just put che0n on having a removal tool like that when che0nsu's never needed an Earth Shock all game.
This is one of the rare instances, though, when you can get a very good Zephyrus for an asymmetrical board clear, where just Zephyrus Flame Strike on this turn
lines up pretty good.
Lines up pretty beautifully, actually, because, again, for Shaxy, it's about trying to keep control of the board rather than just remove, because I feel like he won't be able to win.
So at that point, then, do you think Shaxy kind of missed it? Because this is not the most secure line of players I've ever seen in the world in terms of these. I mean, it worked out okay, but...
He's sacrificing away a lot of board control here. I guess with the Ziliax coming down, he's able to get it.
And I guess now, again, speaking of Earth Shock, if Earth Shock comes down on that Dynamatic, then suddenly Tyrion might be okay. Might not be the best card in the world, but if Shaxy finds himself ahead somehow, and then just goes, oh, actually, there's a Tyrion, enjoy that one.
And I guess this is just the power of Zephyrus, isn't it? It is the ultimately flexible card.
Oh, yeah, it's
the
OP.
point is it's good in literally every situation. Apart from when you really need it to be.
Apart from when you need Master Spell.
Yeah, exactly.
Float like a butterfly.
These are scary turns from for che0nsu, I think. This is a good turn itself, but che0nsu is playing onto an empty board on his side, into a board on Shaxy's side, which is, he's just got to stop and think, right, I'm not losing this game, am I? You know. And there's the shot.
As he gets, what is that card even called? It's the new card that was added into the classic
Animal
set.
Tamer.
Stable Hand?
Close enough.
Baron's Stable Hand. There you go. Someone's a random beast.
Very famous place somewhere.
Really? Not Baron Stable Hand. Of House Stable Hand.
No.
Okay. I do like our little Warcraft history lessons every so often.
Board level 10 plus area. Famous, and it actually is famous for its chat.
Oh, really? They
Baron's,
got good
have you ever heard of
chats?
Baron's chat? Well, good is very subjective, Derek. You might laugh, many people probably would not, about some of the things that are discussed in Baron's general chat.
The 4chan of Azeroth?
Yes, very, very, very apt description, actually. You got it. But still, every single board here that Shaxy's not losing, I keep just thinking, like, oh, like, is he actually going to stay ahead for another turn?
Maybe.
He needs
Super
to Collider.
play quick though. Yeah, is this a Super Collider?
Yeah,
turn?
yeah, it has to be.
I think it has to be, yeah. He still tanks the 4 though, so this is a lot of damage he's taking here.
It is, but
This felt wrong. Well, he's...
Wait, did he miss align the mana? Did he think he could devastate this turn, maybe?
Probably.
You know, like devastate off at the last minion?
Right, because...
Because then it didn't matter what he...
Yeah.
Hit, right?
Because it's difficult to do these turns, but you have to realize that in situations like this, tanking 9 damage on that turn, even if you have to use Zephyrus, just going Zephyrus Flame Strike was better here.
Right.
Like, or Zephyrus Twisting or whatever. As long as you don't tank the damage, that's the most difficult.
I guess my question is... It's not bad. Is Shaxy scared of dying this turn? I don't think so.
I guess it would be unlikely that.
And then he has Warpath Plague.
Fair. He's already seen a life.
And it's one life drink has been played, right?
Yeah.
So there's one in the Shadowwalk pool, and all the other, damage effects are very arbitrary, kind of random, right?
I just think it's not about dying on this turn. He has no health gain in his hand, so every point he tanks, it's not just immediate death. It's straight up. It's next turn, the turn after, the turn
I guess
after.
he has Zephyrus, one way or the other.
Fair.
I mean, you shouldn't just say, "Oh, I've got Zephyrus, I'm going to play bad."
Right, yeah.
Although some people do. You shouldn't do that, which I'm not saying that's a good enough excuse, but he has some recovery. But I do feel like, for me, one of the rare instances where Shaxy is not looked like he has tight play. And he has not done that often as far as I can recall. He's one of the few players I've actually been saying has played consistently well throughout Grandmasters.
Absolutely.
So a rare occurrence. Remember where you were today. Shaxy roped and kind of took too much damage.
So Shaxy here has to be setting up for Healing Touch. Hero Power, Zephyrus, Healing Touch. That works out perfectly.
If not, and he doesn't get a taunt, he's just dead to
If he doesn't do that, I will be staggered. Okay, here we go. He knows what he's doing. I think he knows that that probably wasn't the optimal turn, and is making up for that as best as possible.
Yeah,
which is fine.
I think he did not really pull off the turn he wanted to previously, and now he's like, he's already computed the fact that, well, this is the outcome of me messing up a little bit, maybe.
Yeah.
So this is my recovery plan. He's kicking it in right now, and again, starts to look a lot safer on 13. For now.
Still the coolest entrance voice line in all of Hearthstone coming into play now. Enter. And there is one place that Alakir is going.
Oh, can't see a Deathwing turn right just yet.
Deathwing to summon them a 9-drop.
Yeah.
Yes. The big boy play. What's the worst 9-drop at the moment that they can get?
Worst 9-drop.
It used to be like Dragon Tamer, right? But they're all pretty good at the moment.
I think they're all okay.
Yeah.
Arguably Batterhead, because it's
I
just the
guess so,
lowest
yeah,
attack.
low attack.
It's sometimes it's the best 9-drop, but I think on its own, when you're going for lethal, it's the worst purely because it's only got 3 attack. I think. I'm sure someone will tweet me and say,
Shaxy, of course, has a clear no matter what with the Plague of Wrath, even with a Slam if he wants to keep his Zephyrus alive. But he's looking for a way to clear this off, I think, a bit more reasonably with something like
the Mummy.
Slam Mummy.
Oh, I love that
Slam that Mummy.
Yeah, no. Yeah. I'm going to reword that one.
Oh, no, he's going for it. I guess this is... Oh, I drew another Plague anyway. It's kind of funny. But I guess he's assuming that he isn't going to face that many big boards unless exactly Shudderwatt comes down. And maybe he answers Shudderwatt with Deathwing. That's the plan. And then you just say, well, you know, it's game one way or the other.
I'll tell you exactly what he's thinking. Everybody get up. It's time for Plague Slam.
Don't believe you. But there's Bloodlust and there's Lava Burst. That could have been 1 damage. A lightning bolt away from a victory there for che0nsu. Just take Hex. He knows he plays Deathwing.
That's true.
He
yeah,
knows.
that is true. That is
like,
true.
just take this board, push 2 damage, and win with Lava Burst, right? Like, but if Deathwing comes down, it's the one card that honestly he can just lose to.
I think that's smart because, you know, Earthen Might to push 2 damage. If he gets a single point of damage to face, he basically wins anyway. And we are in that situation yet again, as predicted, where I suppose, well, che0nsu has just pressured Shaxy to the point where Elysiana is unplayable. So even if the lethal pushes don't quite get there in the next couple of turns, Shaxy's just unable to prevent fatigue.
Wait, is Shaxy's... Let me just check. Ah, interesting, interesting. Shaxy's not running the Whirlwind.
Oh, okay.
So, I was just wondering, like, these plagues have been hard for him to pull off.
And he's had 3 Warpaths this game.
He has, but I guess the problem is he's used 3 Warpaths to clear 3 boards without using Plague, which you could argue is a good thing.
Yeah.
But
yeah, this looks to me like a swing with the weapon into insta-death.
Okay. che0nsu looking fantastic so far in Grandmasters. Taking out that Lava Burst. Good heads-up play. Did have option of Bloodlust, but again, I think that you don't need minions to stick most of the time, especially going to that fatigue count for Shaxy that he was about to hit. So che0nsu takes game number 1. and he's looking happy about that, and I can't really blame him. Like, off to a great start, and I say start, we're like, what, halfway through the season now? Over halfway through as we hit the end of week 4. He's had a great run through Grandmasters, so impressive. And again, just 1-0 up versus Shaxy. Great. 1, 2, maybe 2 more games. He wins another match this week, which is going to look fantastic for him going into the last few weeks. And I think cements him to at least top 4 into the playoffs if he can take down Shaxy. So we're going to go to a quick break while we give him a minute just to set up the next game. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back with some more Hearthstone.
What's up, Hearthstone fans? Welcome back to another episode of The Curve, where we draw the biggest headlines from this past weekend on Curve. I'm your host, Dan Frodancho. Let's do this. We're almost halfway through the season, and the first set of round robins are almost complete. In the Asia Pacific region, Tom che0nsu has been reigning supreme until he suffered his first loss this weekend in a stunning upset. Tom lost his first match to Blitzchung, who is currently the last place player in the division. Hot on Tom's heels is Glory from Japan, whose only loss is to Tom. In Division A, che0nsu currently sits undisputed at the top. The European region went through a roller coaster of emotions this weekend. Previous season winner Fino, who is winless this season, was about to beat Casey on Sunday, but missed his last attack due to the rope fizzling out amidst a myriad of card animations. A visibly frustrated Fino left his webcam briefly to cool off, but came back to accept his defeat like a pro. Equally classy was Casey in his interview as he verbally explained his contemplation of the situation because he knew it was a tough one as well.
I feel worse than when I would have lost, actually. Like, it is against Fino, one of my best friends and one of the best guys that I talked to the most in whole of 2018.
For someone who is known as one of the fastest players in Hearthstone, we got to see a rare occurrence of Casey wrestling with decision. We weren't drama-free either in the Americas region, as newcomer Gallon called out Nalgi for his terrible mentality in his winning interview the day before the two played against each other.
I'm calling you out, Nalgi. I think your attitude to losing is really bad. You say a lot of stuff like, oh man, I got unlucky, my Dr. Boom was bottom 10 or whatever, and you don't look at where you messed up.
Nalgi responded on Twitter to explain no hard feelings, but also his side as well, ultimately letting his play do all the talking on Sunday night. Nalgi shut down the rookie 2-0, secured first place in his division, and then proceeded to make his own call-out. Nalgi and his teammate Monsanto both chose to take their winning interview time to call out not another player, but the entire European region.
If you go back to watch the EU matches, there are a lot of mistakes as well, or better place to do so.
Oh, you're up? They think they're so good.
Are they?
Like they're not watching their own games. I don't know.
Yes!
The tensions build as we look forward to an epic BlizzCon where we hope to see the cross-regional sparks fly. Outside of the 3 major Grandmasters region, there's one very big region that is also a huge part of the Hearthstone ecosystem, and that is, of course, China. In China, the Gold Team Championships have started back up, and currently the team Sun Ning is on top. You might recognize SN Jing from that team as he was on the world stage just recently in April. If you're looking for more information on the Chinese Hearthstone region, you can find out all the information at gold.blizzard.cn/GTC. In this week's meta moment, we want to highlight the Quest Druid. The deck has been growing in its popularity, and after not seeing an abundance of it in week 1, it's almost become a staple in weeks 2 and 3. The deck sports lots of legendary cards that have been hotly debated in the professional scene. Arguments both for and against King Feoris have been made, and the same goes for other legendaries like Elise the Enlightened and to a lesser degree, even Cenarius. But no matter how you build a deck, the core of it remains the same, as the completed quest provides very powerful cards because of the Choose One combined abilities. Cards like Hidden Oasis, Starfall, Oasis Surger, Nourish, Wardru Lodi become game changers that can swing the board dramatically in one turn. If you haven't seen the deck in action, check out the Just Saiyan vs. Bloody Face series to see a good example of how the deck can be creatively and powerfully utilized. Another interesting note in Asia Pacific, Shaxy, very insistent on putting Malygos in his Druid decks and going as far as to protect this deck not like his opponents even wanted to ban it anyways, and still getting the wins. If you missed any of the Grandmasters action, you can check out the VODs on our YouTube page, youtube.com/Hearthstone Esports. Grandmasters resumes this weekend, so don't forget to follow us on Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube. That's it for us. We'll see you in the chat room.
We are back and ready to continue Shaxy versus che0nsu. And che0nsu getting a pretty good win. It looked pretty solid as well, just with that Shaman list. And I was saying, you know, does the list have enough to get there? And yeah, it looked like it kind of did. He did get a very powerful barista off in the mid game, which gave che0nsu just free reign. As you said, it's less about what the actual minions are and more about just saying, fill the board, clear. Fill the board, clear. Fill the board. You know, just repeatedly without really not caring about what Shaxy has, but saying, well, Shaxy has extra removal. I have way more actual just board refills. Eventually, I'll get there. Did seem to work out with che0nsu that time.
Well, I think you were kind of right the first time. I think he could just not care what Shaxy did. And I think that was exactly right. Once you have a powerful play like that, he utilized that 100% in the correct way, in my opinion, by just turning up everything to 11, pushing as much damage as he could. And I think combining that with Shaxy's disregard for his health total, it felt like in that game, che0nsu came away the deserving winner, which is, of course, reflected in their scores, as you can see there. Shaxy was unassailably our best player, both in terms of record and arguably in terms of performance in Season 1. He was playing very, very strong, whereas this time, a little bit more middling, whereas che0nsu has just been low-key, you know, keeping his head to the ground and nose to the grindstone, I suppose would be the more appropriate expression. But just doing very, very well, playing incredibly solid Hearthstone.
Yeah, and bringing side decks as well, as far as I'm concerned. Let's get game number 2 underway, though. Shaxy on the Zoo on the top, and che0nsu going for that Druid. So he is going to queue the Druid, not going to queue his Warlock instead. So now I feel like Shaxy has a reasonable go of actually evening this series up.
Big time, especially with that kind of hand. Not just the Zoo in general, It's kind of interesting to see che0nsu mulligan away Worthy Expedition, because it's a card that feels good because it can just smooth out your curve on turn 2, and it's the only thing you can do with still completing the quest on turn 2. But I guess on average, if it doesn't find you exactly Wrath or Crystal Power, it is just quite a weak card in the matchup. When you compare it to just Wrath from your deck or Crystal Merchant from your deck.
Right. Yeah, these turns are looking pretty good from Shaxy, aren't they?
And a 100% necessary draw, in my opinion, here for che0nsu to have any chance in this series comes through in the form of Wrath.
You know what I think about this card, Darrett? That's in the board.
Exactly what you
it's
think.
Like, what a play. It's just always coin vulture. And now the real question is just what can che0nsu do about it? Put it to 1 health? Oh no, he's got to kill the wolf.
Yeah.
Keep the 2/1-1s, that makes more sense.
And the Innovate does make for some interesting decisions now. che0nsu, next turn, we could potentially see Innovate Nourish Ramp with a non-completed version. It's probably not what we're going to see, but depending on his draw, it's something that could be considered. Say he finds another Nourish, just to give him more mana to play with on the following turn.
Yeah, the problem with that is I think it actually loses him the game, because I think you need this quest live to do stuff. Like, without the quest, this deck sucks. Like, it just does, you know, it doesn't really do anything powerful enough, which means that even though it hurts taking damage right now, I think he needs to do it just to get this quest live. Choices here: Power of the Wild to get something on the board this turn and still be able to activate quest, or more reasonably, I think what I would have picked is the Hidden Oasis.
Yeah, I like the Hidden Oasis a lot there.
Let's see.
I think he's considering Innovate Zephyrus Hero Power to take out the Juggler and get something in play.
Oh, okay. For a second, I was like,
Let's count together, che0nsu.
This is reasonable. If you just think more of a, it's a 3/2. He doesn't need the Innovate because he's got 6 drop turns next turn anyway, whether that be draw and ramp or just heal.
And honestly, it's not looking that bad for che0nsu, considering how devastating of a start this was for him.
I mean, the next turn's got a little bad.
I guess it's pretty bad.
It's filthy in every way.
Yeah, it really is. So how does it start off? Do you just start off with a tap for a 3-drop?
Yeah, just see what happens.
It's always Witch's Cauldron, man. What is happening?
It's either
with that
Witch's
card?
Cauldron or King Mukla. There is no middle ground.
You're either with them or you're against them. Wouldn't be much of a face-off between the two.
It's pretty straightforward. Just play the ruse. Do you think he's considering actually Grim Rallying the Cauldron? Is that ever a thing? To keep the death rattles through a Starfall?
Yeah.
I guess the board's big enough to dodge Starfall anyway, mostly. Like, you know, the Vulture's 6, the 3/3 goes to a 4/4,
Right.
which is good at dodging it. One death rattle's still on the board. It's just an interesting thought, that's all.
It is, and I think I like this way because what may seem like a kind of insignificant part of it, but is the whole reason for Witch's Cauldron, is if Starfall were to come down here, he'd probably trade into the 4/4 and then Starfall the Vulture, which means that's 4 cards that are being generated there, which is really strong. If you can get Bloodlust, Lava Burst, Lightning Bolt, anything.
Soul the Murloc.
Nuts, yeah. Haunting Visions, True Farsight, there's a bunch of them. Bit of a tough turn now, though, obviously, for che0nsu here, as Nourish has to be leaving him pretty scared of just dying on the spot, unless he hits very specific cards, so I don't really think that's an option.
Time waits for no one.
So I mean, I think it's pretty clearly a Hidden Oasis turn, as much as that hurts. Wow. I guess not. So many.
It's the idea that one taunt just isn't enough to get it done, right?
Fair.
The heal does buy time, and I don't know, that turns hard.
Beacon Lightning, trade, Leroy. The perfect card there.
Oof.
Zephyrus's Cauldron coming in hot here for Shaxy to equalize the game, as very much expected in this matchup, at 1 game apiece.
And that one was just tough. You look at the hand, it just didn't quite do enough.
Yeah.
che0nsu had a couple of good draws. He had the Wrath, he had a tiny smattering of plays early on, but not really enough. And versus Zoo, I think you either need to draw those Ferocious Howls and you know, just either get a lot of armor and health available to you, but what you really need is the Anubis Earth Defenders, in my opinion. Just be able to either go for Nourish or go for the Hidden Oasis along with taunts in the same turn, which makes you either draw, ramp and taunt, or heal and make 2 big taunts, which are doing the duality of what you need to do to beat that kind of opening from Zoo. But again, the coin into Vulture, pretty much uncontested, is backbreaking most of the time anyway against a Druid.
It really is. And I think while, you know, that game in-game was somewhat self-explanatory, it was just the Zoo running away with the game for the most part. The most interesting thing to me is the metagame aspect of it, where che0nsu decided to play his Druid
I thought he just wasn't going to.
And I agreed with you there. I thought you were correct in that assessment, because che0nsu, with his Zoo Warlock now, could go up against Warrior or the Paladin, and it does seem like we just got confirmation that che0nsu is switching over to his Warlock. And the only different factor in that seems to be that Shaxy can now not play his own Warlock, given that he's won with that. But that's a 50-50, and you would much, much rather take that than Druid.
I'd take a Mirror any day over the Druid. And also, even if you lose, you're in this spot anyway. But if you win, you've won. You know, so that's it. It seemed to, I'm not sure about that Druid pick. It seemed that che0nsu did end up in a situation after Shield and Bans that his Druid was just not going to be played and not worth playing. But he went for it. And the problem is going for it, as you said, on this game meant that there was no mind games. There was no mind games to win. Like, you couldn't just get Druid against Warrior if he thinks it's good, or Druid against Paladin. Like, they're all not great. And if you're going to do it, you do it game 1, I would have thought. So I don't know, I'm kind of lost too.
Me too. And speaking of interesting picks again, Shaxy with his Paladin is another deck I was not expecting him to queue. I was expecting him to go with the Warrior again, because Warrior against Zoo, I would say obviously a pretty good matchup. Warrior against the Druid that che0nsu has as well. Shaxy's build is the super removal heavy one with double Plague of Wrath, Deathwing, double Brawl, all the early removal cards.
Did he think he was, like, che0nsu was going to switch, or going to stay on Druid
I
to
think-
try and hit the warrior.
Right, exactly, because che0nsu does have a very heavy build in Druid, but for Shaxy, maybe he doesn't think this matchup is that bad. I would be inclined to disagree with him were he to make that case, though.
Reporting for duty.
But either way, he's got off to a pretty reasonable start here, actually, almost beating the Zoo just on board in the first couple turns.
And there's 2 more Reborns as well with the Candle Taker and the Mermaid. Well, there is a Sea Giant in hand as well for che0nsu, so both players looking to have a reasonably good opening.
I think this is honestly... I was going to say I would have liked to have seen the second Lackey come down there. I guess if he's going to go Lackey plus Recruiter next turn, he may as well just save it, but if he's afraid of not having a Lackey to be able to play with it, that's not really a concern at all, because there's very little way for Shaxy to be able to... I guess with Consecration, yeah, I guess maybe because of exactly Consecration, it's worth holding it back. Fair enough. Yeah, I think this is fine for che0nsu. Because while I was questioning Shaxy for his pick here, with turn 5 completion and hero power play available, things are actually looking pretty good, yeah.
This subdue is massive as well. Or it's not, I guess, technically, based on what the card does.
It's tiny.
Yeah.
Which is exactly what you want.
Exactly. But yeah, regardless, important is the word I'll use instead. Should be able to lock down either this 5/5 or specifically a Sea Giant. It's just so great because it's 2 mana, just go away to a minion, isn't it? So there's a threat. No, you're not. Shut up. Done. Move on. Because it's just so cheap. It's just, I don't know, it's so sick. It just kill a minion, just dies. It's 2 mana, kill a minion.
A very appropriate Paladin-y card as well. I like it a lot.
One of the few instances in the deck where the hero power actually buffs the minion.
True.
Overall, normally what you hero power are eggs, which makes them. I mean, buff in
debatably.
Yeah, I mean buff as in it gains stats
Yes,
as opposed to
better.
loses certain levels of stats. It literally only goes up. Yeah, normally I mean those are eggs, but obviously in this kind of game, anything with Reborn just beats Zoo in terms of board effectiveness, which is a rare occurrence in Hearthstone.
It really does.
I like just trading the minion. Get rid of it.
Yeah. Better against Sea Giant, more Reborn minions knocking about, so a higher chance of a good hero power next turn as well. And just nice and sticky as well.
Shaxy will need to draw something soon, though. Maybe he's got a turn or two to draw something heavily impactful, mainly a mech is probably what he's after.
Yeah.
Just so he can get the Sonotron into hero power down at some point on almost. Even if it's just a clean mech and you end up with a 2/2 Divine Shield Taunt, fine. It's not great, but fine. Because che0nsu, as you can see now, is starting to keep the pressure on, and it's not only this wave he has. Look at the rest of his cards: Solarium, Juggler, Thrasher, Evil Genius. He has stuff. Although this Bone Wraith is a pretty sick pickup.
Yeah, this is pretty fortunate for Shaxy here, actually, with these draws he's getting, because he's running a build of the deck that does not run counters Ashmore. It's a very draw-light version of the deck compared to a lot of other builds, because he wants to fit in, of course, the 2 subdues, which in this instance is working out for him.
Guess skipping Bone Wraith this turn, plays it next turn, because you're not playing Bone Wraith without hero power in it. Not in a million years.
Yeah, hero power is just better, especially as he's so low on cards. He needs to eke out that
And
value.
Bone Wraith is amazing.
So good, yeah. So
The
good.
taunt aspect of it against specifically Zoo, but it's basically a Tar Creeper on steroids at that point.
Yes.
It's almost exactly middle ground between a Tar Creeper and a Sludge Belcher, isn't it? It's 1 mana between.
Yeah.
It doesn't quite have the attack, but it has the Reborn, which is arguably better or not better than the Sludge because it can be healed.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like almost the exact cross between those 2 cards.
It's true. The child of the 2 cards I would least like to see have a child together.
Yep. Agreed. Imagine the Lady in the Tramp moment there with the spaghetti between those 2. Yeah, exactly like that. That's exactly how I imagined it.
Dark
Sound-wise,
even.
at least.
That's actually still the best sound. Alakir's not even close.
What I want to know is if someone made that sound or an item made that sound.
They have a guy in like well-respected voice actor. Yeah, so Charles, what we're going to want you to do is just imagine. I don't even know how do you even describe that.
Imagine you're a goop monster.
Yeah, a pile of sludge, and you're really happy. Yeah.
What's it you doing?
Yeah. It's been secret all along.
Yep, and here we go. The raid into the hero power looks very, very strong. And just look at how sticky the board is. And rightly so, Shaxy just getting rid of, or at least prioritizing the removal of the minions that don't have reborn.
che0nsu's build of Zoo, of course, is entirely lacking in burst damage, like the vast majority of them do. But with just one Kobold Lackey in hand, I think getting to the point where he can push for lethal over the top of Taunt is pretty much out of the question.
His hand is almost entirely lacking as well. No? With 2 lackey generally? No? Okay. I thought I'd try it, alright?
It wasn't bad. It wasn't bad.
I tried something new and it didn't work, okay?
I can't begrudge you for that.
Do you know that reference?
No, I don't.
Do you watch Brooklyn Nine-Nine?
I do.
It's one of the best, you know, the cold opens?
Yeah, yeah.
The best one when Ray walks in with the red thingy hat on.
Oh, yeah.
It's completely silent all the way to his office
yeah.
and he just turns around.
I'm definitely due for a rewatch
Oh, it's
at this
worth
point.
it,
It's
mate.
been a while.
It's worth it, it's so good. The cold opens are like some of the funniest things I've
They
ever
are the
seen.
best. Yeah.
Both players, I feel this is so close because che0nsu's doing a great job of not being overrun by this sort of infinite wave of minions that Shaxy can create. And he's getting so close, has access to Solarium, has the Lackey again to like pick off another minion.
Yeah.
But one, Shaxy has Taunts and Divine Shields and his Everlasting Hero Power, but also Shaxy's honestly like one good draw away from just winning the game. If he can get an egg active at any point, he just wins.
Yeah.
And it's just a dance of death at this point between both players. Whoever just makes that extra step first will just win, and it'll be very quick.
I do like the copy here on the Bone Wraith. It's a little bit close, I think, between the Bone Wraith and the Temple Berserker, because obviously they're both 2/2s on the first half, and then the Temple Berserker becomes a 3/1 as opposed to a 2/1. But I think mainly because even though he has a lot of taunt at the moment, if this Bone Wraith dies, he wants the ability to make another one next turn, just in case he needs the taunt. This is the safety net that I think it's not worth going without.
Generally, you hero power the thing with the ability you want for the rest of the game, which
That's
at
a
the
good way
moment
of
is
looking at
taunt.
it,
Yeah. It's like X, right? Against Warrior, you obviously always hero power X because you want a death rouse for the rest of the game. Shaxy, if he doesn't draw an egg, but just forever makes taunts, well, he won't lose.
Yeah, that's
so.
true. However, these stats on board for che0nsu,
It's close, isn't it?
they do make for some very nice value trades here. Very, very nice.
Close.
Yeah.
Both players are just one draw away, and you see now what looks like weird trades as he's actually left more minions on the board. It's actually just che0nsu just getting rid of as many reborns as possible. So Shaxy now doesn't have a good hero power onto these wraiths. He has a hero power either to make a taunt or he gets a reborn. He doesn't get it all.
Two annoying modules confused together now, however, for a pretty nice value trade on Shaxy's side with the Divine Shield.
And now, funnily enough, what if he lands the hero power on the annoying modules and then trades the 2/2/1s or a 1/2 and a 2/1 into the 1/1s? It just trades all that side in and say, now I'm going to have Divine Shield taunts. They don't reborn, but they have Divine Shield, which is close to reborn, kind of.
A 2/2 Divine Shield taunt. Yeah, it's close, yeah.
You know, it's
yeah,
close.
Yeah.
And he just throws away 2/2/1s he has anyway. The 1/2, if traded into a 1/1, doesn't even die, so it actually just activates the proc.
Right, and it's again that factor that it's slightly worse than copying the Candle Taker, but it has taunt, which could be useful later on in the game.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, yeah. I think I agree.
Yeah,
This
I
is
like
correct.
this. And it's a mech. There's Ziliax in the list.
Good point. Yeah.
You know, like, you want these mechs
That's
just
true.
in case, right?
That's very true. If you find Snip, Snap, or Ziliax, like you said. Whoa, Crystallize is a good top deck there to go in combination with the Vulture.
Yeah, very back and forth matchup. Although it looks
Super
on the
back and
looks on the surface that
Yeah.
Shaxy's winning, and I think he is winning now because of the size of this Annoyer module. But Vulture, as we've seen, makes wonders work. And also, so does Solariums. There was a game yesterday won off the back of a Solarium.
That's true.
There's a Snip Snap, great minion.
That's a second round.
Some people have to put one of those in their deck and pay 3 mana.
Imagine that. Noobs.
Oh yeah, how inefficient. Oh, that's heartbreaking though. Vulture being unplayable.
Yeah. It is sad.
He
It
just
is sad.
really wants this one to
Yeah, of course. The Flame Imp, though, is a great way to get, again, a little bit more value. What's that called? Dreamweaver? Which is, you get a spell if you heal for a certain amount, right?
I thought it was draw a card, am I wrong?
Oh,
No, I'm probably wrong.
I thought it was like if you heal for, every time you heal, you get a random druid spell, I think. That's really testing my card knowledge. This card has never seen play ever.
Oh, is there anything even left?
I think there might be one mech, one micro mummy.
Is there?
Maybe
I
not.
don't think there's anything. Oh, I'm wrong.
Vindication!
Alright. 1 to Derek, 8,000 to Raven. I think the score's still in my favour.
You just missed my Brooklyn reference.
Oh yeah, good point. You know, I was so annoyed that I actually lost the guess.
So obviously the priority numero uno is the Vulture, but then it gets complicated in terms of what you're copying. Are you just copying a 2/2 taunt here? Is Frostwolf Grunt the play?
What if he goes face? No.
Oh,
He does 12!
he does
And he
do
has
12.
reborn minions.
Yeah.
That's so hard to clear up. I wonder if there was ever a world where
At
you
least
could
with
have
the
just
taunt
gone
minions.
face.
Yeah. With the taunt, I absolutely agree. It's face time. che0nsu does not run Spirit Bomb, so there's limited ways to burst through this 4-8 without just pushing through with the minions.
Hero power into a minion that does damage to you is 5 damage this turn if he plays it. The other minion, or one of the other minions in hand, is a Neverset Thrasher, which also does damage to you.
Yeah. This is the problem with Zoo at the moment, is your opponent really doesn't have to hurt you at all for them to start representing counter-lethal very quickly. Like, che0nsu kind of has to trade now, which obviously feeds into your point more of should Shaxy have gone even more face than he did
Because
last
Reborn
time.
is so bad. It's so bad to trade into.
It's true.
It's insane.
Yeah, it's very
so inefficient. And it's mainly about, because the minions hold their attack, and they just have 1 health, so many times in Hearthstone against so many decks, 1 health may as well be 2 or 3 or 4.
Absolutely.
Based on what the trades have to happen. He has to kill off the 4-1, right? And play everything. Push it back. So what does this do? 4, 5, 6, 7. There's no burst apart from Ziliax, which
The
would be
face race is
lethal.
on.
Wouldn't
Was
Ziliax just be lethal?
A second Chrysology!
Worst draw in the deck.
The
by a
worst
mile.
2 draws, 2 cards in a row. Oh!
I also think, okay, Derek, how was going face correct there? I need it explained to me.
For che0nsu or for Shaxy?
For che0nsu.
Instead of
what?
trading.
Yeah. He just loses to Ziliax. And
he
it's a
sets
1
up
damage,
lethal anyway.
but also it makes his board more likely to get cleared because he's left a 4-1 on board against a Thrasher.
Yes, but
So-
does he just lose to Ziliax anyway? Because the heal would be too much and it would be copying a Ziliax reborn micro mummy?
Oh, you know what? You can sell me on that one.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess if it's copied, then that's just a nightmare, isn't it?
Like, I completely understand that the 1 damage face is pretty irrelevant, but maybe it comes into play, you know, with the trades that Shaxy is able to make. It's close.
Yeah.
It's so close there for Shaxy. Oh no, wait, and he is alive.
No, he has to go for the draw. Right?
Yeah.
He has to go for a draw.
He put him in a situation where
Yeah, he has
Neverset
to
can't
draw.
attack. 1 damage off lethal.
Oh,
That
he gets
does it!
Oh, that was top-notch play from Shaxy there.
That was
so
fantastic.
He put che0nsu to 3 because the Neverset needs to attack to
Yeah.
make up the damage, because otherwise it's 9. What che0nsu could have done was go for I believe it ends up in a draw. If you attack with Neverset, it kills you and it kills your opponent.
I honestly don't know.
I am almost certain, because I think I've done it before.
Okay.
But because che0nsu could tap, he always should tap.
Yes.
Because
Yeah.
getting killed by Neverset from 1 to 3 means nothing, you
Yeah.
still die. So great tap. che0nsu's obviously very, very happy with that outcome. He got the direwolf so he could trade and effectively net 1 damage, which
Right.
means he has the 1 damage he was short. Incredibly close game.
That was sick.
A part of me, it was so close, so you could say it was like a fair game, but a part of me feels a little bit for Shaxy because the last 2 draws being Crystology, if there were any other card in the
Anything
deck,
else.
it would have been better. I wouldn't say it would have won, but it would have been
Right.
better. And then if it was Ziliax, it was just a win. If he'd drawn an egg at any point in that game, apart from maybe the last turn, it was
Yeah.
a win. I think because he would have saved the annoying modules for so long that he would have had a annoying module onto an egg, and then you just lose if you're the Zoo player most of the time because of the backswing of the
Yes.
8/8s. So feel a little bit bad for Shaxy, but that was a great series, very, very close overall. But that was tense. I thought we were going to have a draw, and I'd be like, wait, what's...
We just go again.
Yeah, I was like, I'm not 100% sure what the outcome is for the
Yeah,
draw.
yeah.
Crazy.
I think that though, for Shaxy, he can't be too upset about his draw because his starting hand was insane. Outside of a Castrology, it was the absolute dream in a turn 5 completion. But there for che0nsu, it's an interesting point that you made about trading in the 1 damage into the 4/1 copy of Candle Taker that was on the board, because it's not only Ziliax I realized that was a factor, it was the actual pushback and not
The
being able to
Neverset,
attack with
yeah.
Neverset. Exactly. Whereas if he traded, he would have, in that exact instance where Shaxy draws a dead card, been able to net himself 3 damage overall because he misses the 1 but attacks with the Thrasher.
Yeah.
So maybe che0nsu just dodged a bullet there and should have ended up losing.
It's really funny because in different scenarios as well, the 1 damage he pushed meant that he only needed 1 from the direwolf. So very, very strange, but it all works out crazy. But congratulations to che0nsu as he does take another win. And a win against Shaxy 2 is something you've got to be happy about overall, or at least in my book.
Yep.
But we can move on to another